Today's video might save you in your next tournament run, or earn you a prize card, or a seat at Worlds. So listen up. Make sure you guys hit the like button, hit subscribe, ding that notification bell, so that you guys don't get cheated by the hardest to beat monster in the game currently, Liger Dancer. And there's like a lot. Hey guys, this is Tom Box, and let's begin with these two. Insert swipe animation. So we have Heavy Polymerization and Lunalight Fusion. Both of these cards are quite similar in the sense that you can use the extra deck to fuse. But imagine if someone literally cheats out a Liger Dancer by playing them wrong, and it's very, very common. So here's what to watch out for, starting with Heavy Polymerization. Lunalight players that play Heavy Polymerization like to take shortcuts when explaining the card, because the combos in this deck already take a long time, so explaining cards is definitely not in their favor, so they kind of like to keep it short, but they have to make sure they're doing it right, and half the time I'm hearing explanations that sound like this, and you're likely going to hear it yourself. Oh, what does that card do? Oh, it's poly, but it also lets me use monsters in my extra deck as fusion material for each monster that you have, but I have to lose life points equal to the total attack of those monsters that I use in my extra deck. That's how they explain it. But that's not the whole thing. In fact, it's missing two very key points, and if they resolve it like that, it's likely going to lead to an illegal game state where you're not going to catch it until it's already over. So number one key point that they miss, the materials that they use in the extra deck, they have to get banished. Like, there's no other option, because the card itself states you can also banish monsters from the extra deck up to the number of monsters your opponent controls, but lose life points equal to the total attack of those monsters banished this way when the monster's fusion summon. So in other words, it adds a little bit of life point loss in there only if the cards can get banished. So why is this really important? Because a deck like Lunalight, they benefit off of monsters hitting the graveyard. They have graveyard activated effects. They have costs that they can use to pay in the graveyard. They can use the graveyard for fusion material. It leads to a whole bunch of stuff that could just snowball really quickly, especially for a monster like Liger Dancer, which can already deal over 7,000 damage alone. Imagine if they go for Lunalight Wolf summon out like a Perfume Dancer by banishing the additional materials in the graveyard, because they're, well, first of all, they're not supposed to be there, but imagine if they put it there and then they banish it, and then they bounce back the wolf and resummon the wolf. Now they have like, well, over 7,000 damage of just piercing damage. It's pretty crazy, and you guys don't want to be on the receiving end of such an illegal play, because that's game ending. And if you scoop up your cards by then, oh my god, it's GG already. And other things that they can do with it, well, they can have additional negates. Like if they use Silverhound to go with the card, that means they have additional spell trap negation that they shouldn't have to begin with, which makes Heavy Poly a stronger card than it sounds, and that's something that you have to be very, very careful of. And another thing that you have to do with Heavy Polymerization is that it needs to fuse for a monster that requires 3 material. 3 material. This is important because, number one, the cards that they use in the extra deck, they have to get banished. So cards like Artifact Lancia, this is where they come in, because if they use Lancia on you, and they likely will, because it does stun out a lot of the follow-up plays of Lunalights, such as the Lunalight Perfume in the Graveyard, Serenade Dance. There's a lot of stuff that gets stunned out because you cannot banish. Like even Lunalight Wolf or the Graveyard Fusion effect from Masquerade, all of those get shut off thanks to Lancia, and Heavy Polymerization is no different. That's why some people choose not to play this card due to the siding option of just having an auto counter. But regardless, because of the 3 material requirement, I've seen people go like, oh, they have 2 monsters, I'm going to activate Heavy Polymerization, and you got to watch out for people fusing into Perfume Dancer, searching into Perfume, because they're adding a Perfume into hand. Turning Heavy Polymerization into Perfume could lead to a lot of just unreal follow-up, because if they just summon out any other additional monster now, and then they can put one Lunalight name, that Perfume is going to go all the way into just beating you. It's just insanely how powerful it is, how illegal it is. It should be going to card game jail. Don't get caught off guard on this particular card. Heavy Polymerization. Make sure you guys read the card and make sure you don't miss out on the full card text of this, so you can have proper counters. But also note, there is one thing that this card can do. It's not once per turn. So be careful when negating Heavy Polymerization, because if you negate Heavy Polymerization, they don't lose life points. It can just activate another copy. There is 0 restriction when it comes to the number of copies they can activate. Then there's Lunalight Fusion, and players like to explain it like this. Oh, it's essentially just polymerization, but for Lunalight Fusion monsters, and it carries the Lunalight name, so Yellow Martin can search it. That's how they like to explain it. Oh, and also it can use a Shadow Fusion-like effect, where I can use an extra deck monster for a fusion material if you control a monster. Well, that definition, if you guys didn't catch on, is incorrect. It's kind of more like Shadow Fusion than you think, because it states that fusion summon one Lunalight fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters in your hand and field or field as fusion material. But if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, all right, hear me out, extra deck, you can also use one Lunalight monster in your deck or extra deck as fusion material. Note that there's a specific keyword that was left out. You can also use your deck. And honestly, using a monster in your deck is not bad. Sometimes you do want to use the monster in the deck because it will lead to a trigger. You have one monster in your hand, and maybe you want to create some sort of chain block. You'll use Lunalight Fusion to perform that and use a card such as Silverhound, for instance, so that you get one additional summon. So Lunalight Fusion turns into like a double summon, almost like an E-Telly. It's pretty sweet, but because it carries that phrase where you can also use a Lunalight monster in your deck or extra deck, the deck part allows this card to be hit by Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. So that is a pretty significant thing to know, because I think when they explain the card, they leave so much of it out, you forget that you can actually Ash Blossom this card. So that's one of the key tips to help you beat this deck, which is this is one of the cards that you can hit with Ash. Now, why is it so important that you get these definitions right? The biggest problem with these types of poly cards is that it's always going for the boss monster of Liger Dancer. Liger Dancer ends the games too quickly, and if you're not keeping up with the game state that is genuine, the game ends, you scoop up the cards. Once you scoop up the cards, that's over. It's accepted game state. You can't go back. The point is already given, and there's really not much you can do to kind of pull it back anymore. Like, the game's over. And everyone that's played Yu-Gi-Oh! Can tell you that if you pick up your cards, you've already scooped. And with a card that's game ending so quickly, you have such a small time frame to correct the game state before it's too late. And now for some rulings specific to Liger Dancer. Scenario 1 is going to be SP Little Knight. This is going to be very common, and no people are going to say this to you, but if you're a Lunalight player, this is going to matter to you a lot. So, as a Lunalight player, you build your board into an SP Little Knight using an Xyz monster like a Baguska, and you banish a problem card off of the field. Next, now that the problem card is gone, you proceed to use Lunalight Wolf to do the fusion summon on the pendulum scale, activate the pendulum effect, Liger Dancer gets fusion summon onto the field, banishing a bunch of cards out of your graveyard, and now you proceed to battle phase and attempt to do a direct attack, and you declare the direct attack with your Liger Dancer, and your opponent says, hey, hold it, stop. You use SP's effect to banish a card. You can't attack directly. You can't declare a direct attack. Well, you think you can, because I'm like, oh, Liger Dancer, oh, that card's unaffected by SP. Well, you guys call a judge, and guess who the judge is going to side with? That's right. The judge is going to side with the Lunalight player. Oh, but why, Tom? Why is it going to side with why are they siding with that? Like, why can't you do a direct attack? I thought you can't declare direct attacks. Well, SP Little Knight's wording is very specific of how it prevents the direct attack. All right, and here's how it is worded. If this card is link summoned using a fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link monster as material, you can target one card on the field or in either graveyard. That's the activation. Banish it. Also, your monsters cannot attack directly this turn. With the mentioning specifically on monsters, SP Little Knight's effect applies to the monster, and therefore the direct attack option on the player is still available. It's not preventing a player action whatsoever, and therefore Liger Dancer being a card that is unaffected by all other card effects except for Lunalights, this card is not affected by SP Little Knight, and therefore can do a direct attack. So, guess what? The judge will side with the Lunalight player on this one, but again, this is one thing that you should probably confirm. Confirm with your head judge just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, because at the event, the head judge's rule is the one that truly matters, and everything else is kind of like moot. If the head judge says no, then it's no, but typically the head judges do know what they're doing. So very likely that SP Little Knight will not be able to prevent the direct attack coming from Liger Dancer. If SP Little Knight said, and this is not what it says, you cannot declare direct attacks this turn, then you will not be able to do direct attacks with Liger Dancer. Essentially, it's that simple. Okay? So, yeah, Liger Dancer isn't affected by SP. We'll still get in the classic 1-2 punch. And get it? Liger Dancer attacks twice. Okay, bad joke. We'll move on. And then there's Sales Ban. So if your opponent calls Liger Dancer, specifically Lunalight Liger Dancer, as the card name for Sales Ban, well, guess what? You can't activate Liger Dancer's effect for the turn. But why? I thought Liger Dancer is unaffected by Sales Ban. And technically, Liger Dancer is unaffected by Sales Ban, but you aren't. You are affected by Sales Ban because the wording on Sales Ban specifically states declare one card name for the rest of the turn. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects of cards with the same original name as that declared card. Your opponent can't do it. And the same restriction applies to you, but for the rest of the duel instead of just this turn. So it's applied onto the player. It's an action that gets removed from them. Essentially, imagine if there was a button to activate the effect. That button just got removed. That's what it is. Liger Dancer can still have its effect. It's just that you can't declare it, right? And therefore making Sales Ban a legitimate way to kind of turn off a Liger Dancer. But essentially, it's also a great way to bait out the Silver Hound in the graveyards because they're likely going to negate that, just so that they keep the Special Hurricane, the Jaugen-esque effect to destroy all special summon monsters your opponent controls. But there are other cards that also work against, say, the Liger Dancer, such as Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon, because whatever that doesn't get flipped face down, your opponent has to send those cards to the graveyard. They don't have an option. It causes a player performed action upon resolution. Another one that's very similar is Evenly Match, because Evenly Match, well, makes the opponent banish cards face down, and it's another thing that makes the player do something rather than affecting the cards directly themselves. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'm going to give you guys a very important reminder regarding the Dominus cards. Just keep in mind that they do have restrictions on them. The restrictions on them are very, very important. Just because a deck can play Dominus Impulse doesn't mean that they can bypass those restrictions and just completely forget about it, because we have hand traps such as, well, Artifact Lancia, Drone Lockbird, and there's also Melcharming Meows, there's Melcharming Fuelos. All of these cards under Dominus Impulse, if they activated from hand, can no longer be activated anymore because of the monster attribute restriction. And this is a reminder to myself as well, because I remember in my feature match against Nishi, well, let's just say I got very lucky breaking through the board while getting hit by, well, all sorts of attributes when they're not supposed to happen. It was a harder game than it needed to be, but luckily Lunalight Liger Dancer pulled through and took game for me. But aside from that, yeah, just keep check. Just because a deck can play Dominus Impulse and have their deck synergize with it doesn't mean that they get a free pass, due to the fact there's so many hand traps like Lancia, Meows, Droll, all those great hand traps. Something that you're going to have to still keep in your mind. And to close out this video, I'm going to give you guys a classic little ruling question. Can a card like Muddy Mud Dragon be used for a fusion substitute while it is in the extra deck, or banished? Say for Fallen of Albaz, when it's like you're fusing for Lubellion's effect, or you're trying to heavy polymerizations for Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, right? Can it be done? If you answered no, you can't, you would be correct, because the fusion substitute effect was updated for King of the Swamp, that applied across the board because it mentioned it in the ruling that stated that, hey, you can only use the fusion substitute effect when it is in the hand, when it's on the field, or in the graveyard. If it is in the deck or extra deck, it cannot apply. If it's banished, it cannot apply. It's very specific. It's very weird. It's one of those things that I could probably talk about for days, but that is how it is. So no, you cannot use Muddy Mud Dragon as a substitute. And I get why some people would want to do that. They want to be like, oh, I want to reduce the amount of life points I have to lose when fusing for a Liger Dancer with heavy poly. And to that I say, you still can't do it, because Leo Dancer, Liger Dancer, they require the specific materials listed above. Oh, but then why can Kaleido Chick use it? Because Kaleido Chick takes the name of those cards. That's why when it fuses as that name, so that's why Kaleido Chick was allowed. Whereas these ones straight up just substitute as the monster. It does not work. And that's it. That's all I got for this video, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button, hit subscribe, ding that notification bell, share it with your friends, because if they're not familiar with a Lunalight matchup and they need some sort of edge against that matchup and don't want to get screwed by improper playing, illegal game states, this is one for reminding you, especially with WCQ happening tomorrow. You don't want to mess it up, especially when you guys are playing for extremely high stakes. Don't want to miss out. Thank you guys for watching. Best luck in your tournament.